Hi everyone, my name is Craig. We'll go ahead and get started with the webinar today. So this is Paying for Dental School. Just a little bit about us first.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela Moore. As Brian mentioned, I'm the financial aid coordinator at the University of Florida College of Dentistry. I do also handle the vet med students as well. At the College of Dentistry, I work with both the DMD and our advanced and graduate education students, and I do a little bit of everything. I do financial aid, I work with the students on financial literacy, I award and coordinate their aid, and I basically support the college in whatever they need me to do.
Yeah, and my name's Craig. I'm a first-year dental student at the University of Pennsylvania. And last year I served as ASDA's Predental consultant, so I worked with Brian, the council membership, and the Predental Advisory Committee to kind of get Predental membership going and get everyone excited about that. And right now I'm paying for dental school through loans, scholarships, loans, need-based aid, and more loans. So, yeah. Some of the goals for this webinar today, these are really just like the basic goals. We only have an hour webinar, so we really can't get much more than like surface level with this. But really just kind of understanding what cost of attendance means, knowing the different types of financial aid available, how to apply for the aid, and why your decisions now in finances really impact you for the rest of your dental student career and for the rest of your life. And then of course I'll kind of integrate a little bit of my experiences in as well. So this number is a little bit daunting, $261,000. That's the average amount of student debt for an indebted dental student in 2016. And that number just keeps rising every year. It's doubled in the past 10 years. And it's something that ASDA has always kind of, like fought against and advocated for our members to try to get that number to be a little bit more manageable. So how do we tackle this? We'll first talk about cost of attendance and why it matters.
So cost of attendance is, or also called COA, is the absolute most important number you can be aware of when it comes to comparing dental schools and comparing their prices, which is kind of what we're talking about here in terms of trying to keep your debt down. So the first thing to look at is, how much is this school going to cost me? A little bit of a side note, some schools may say total cost of attendance or TCA instead of COA. It's the same thing, means the same thing. You can look at it either way. Basically, COA is the estimated cost of attending dental school. It includes tuition and fees and books and supplies, along with allowances for living expenses. I say estimate because as good as the COA is, and as accurate as we try to get it to be, it's not going to be the exact total cost of obtaining a dental degree. For example, your living expenses aren't necessarily going to be exactly what you personally spend in living and attending dental school. Simply because in a financial aid office, when we're developing the cost of attendance, we have to come up with a standard number that more or less averages out for everyone. We can't do exact numbers for each student. Also, the COA is not going to include the interest that accrues on your student loans, and we're going to talk quite a bit about interest with loans because it matters a great deal. That said, even though COA is not necessarily the absolute exact figure you're going to spend on dental school, it is by far the best figure you have available to make comparisons between dental schools and get an idea of how much exactly it's going to cost you.
Yeah, so just kind of to give you guys an example, we took University of Florida and University of Pennsylvania to kind of give you guys an example of what you're looking at when you see a cost of attendance. And yeah, Penn's expensive. There's no getting around that. But kind of taking into account public versus private schools. So the University of Pennsylvania is a private school, so they don't differentiate between in-state and out-of-state students. So you'll see a total number here at the bottom, and that's the total cost for 1 year, whether you're a Pennsylvania resident or not. They don't really care. And the other thing that I kind of want to point out here is that if you're an out-of-state student that's going to an in-state school, that's probably your cheapest option, your least expensive option to go to your state school. However, some schools that I learned about while applying, such as Connecticut and Maryland, if you live in that state for 1 year or 2 years, you can then apply for in-state tuition. So then those schools might even be cheaper than your in-state school, which was the case for me when I was applying to VCU. Each COA, each cost of attendance, kind of calls things different, like calls the same thing by a different name. So like for example, general fee is the same thing as something Angela will talk about in Florida's, but that's pretty much the fee to use all of UPenn's facilities. And then when you're looking at like the miscellaneous fee down here, that's kind of like a coverall: health insurance, background checks, travel expenses, loan fees, personal expenses, all of that sort of stuff. The cost to take your boards, pretty much everything else is included in the miscellaneous. Whereas if you look at Florida's, it looks a little bit different.
So speaking of Florida's, now UFCD is a state institution. We're a public university, so you might see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a note at the bottom that you need to add another number to get the total cost of attendance for an out-of-state resident. So we do differentiate between in-state and out-of-state. The majority of the students that come to us, as you might expect, are in fact Florida residents, since they're going to get that cheaper tuition from day one. Like Craig mentioned, you can apply, there is a process to apply to change your residency status from out-of-state to in-state, and I believe most institutions are going to have something like this. It does vary from state to state based on the state laws. In Florida, it is 12 months. You have to live in Florida for 12 months to apply to change your status. It isn't, I do want to make a cautionary note that it's not guaranteed that your status will get changed. You can apply for it, you can try for it. Our students typically are pretty successful with it, but it isn't a guarantee. So if you're someone who's looking at an out-of-state public institution, I definitely would look at the full cost of attendance, including out-of-state tuition for all 4 years when you're making your decision, just so you're aware of, you know, how things are going to pan out if in fact you don't get to reclassify your residency. Again, Craig mentioned the categories look different here. For example, UPenn puts room and board together on one line. UFCD, we put food on one line and housing on another line. If you add them together, it comes out just a little cheaper than UPenn. We come out to $16,950 for the equivalent of room and board at UPenn. So it's going to be important when you're looking at costs of attendance to analyze those categories and get an idea of what's what, and then use those numbers to compare. You want to make sure you're comparing apples and oranges, basically. And the final thing I want to point out is our transportation line, and I believe UPenn, Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, I think UPenn has something in their cost of attendance for transportation as well, maybe in the miscellaneous category.
Yeah, it's just everything's lumped together.
It's lumped together. Okay, that's what I thought. So transportation I bring up as important is because when you're thinking about the location of your dental school, also think about going home. I mean, you're more than likely not going to be at your dental school for 4 years straight without ever going back home to see your family. So for UFCD, our transportation item, we are basing that on a certain number of car trips within Florida during a semester. So I think you can see the potential issue there if you're an out-of-state person who maybe needs to fly home if you're going to make a visit to your family. Your cost to visit your family is going to be much higher than the estimate we're giving you. So definitely always consider location when you're looking at schools, and this is why COA is not necessarily exact. You personally may have a somewhat higher cost to go back and forth to seeing your family.